that's what the owner had declared. I wasn't aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, I thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
No questions, no.
Well, I think we've heard sufficient. I don't think I'll be questioning you on this. We know what your position is. Having said that, is there a desire for summation
No.
further?
There's no
Mr.
I
Neufeld?
guess I sort of, yeah, I've given you lots of different values, and the decision you have to make isn't, is partial value, partial, the legality of this all, and I can obviously express my opinion, but I know in the long run that the board is faced with deciding those factors, and so obviously, we provided you with 4 different values. Yes, 4 different values. The previous assessment, which I believe they didn't have a foundation to change. The sale, which is of interest, which they never relied on in the first place in the reassessment, and they're not relying on it now. And then our calculation of an NOI, just to show you how it was done, because our calculation of the NOI was not an assessment process, it was an evaluation process. This is how you do it. You go and look at the revenue streams and you talk to the owner. In this case, the agent who did all the lease up was there. We knew the dates, we knew the numbers, we knew what was happening. So that supported the sale price. And then, of course, we had the missing information from the mailer. I've given you 4 different numbers. I think that's very typical of the confusing cases I like to bring towards you and let you make the decision. Bottom line is, I don't think they had the right to make the change. Thank you very much, and ask you to read that act.
Thank you. Okay, that will conclude your properties, Mr. Neufeld?
Yes.
Yeah, we are gonna take a short break. Before we do that, I just want clarification, or is this conclude your?
What's gonna happen is, Matt Barak, this is all sort of one big property that's coming in right next, so Matt's doing one portion of it, I'm doing the rest of it. So he'll come in, because his will be done quickly, and then I'll finish off.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, we'll take
15 minutes.
15 minutes. So let's be back at 1:45 at the latest, please. We'll recess. meeting back to order. Before we proceed with the next properties, I just want to address the previous request, Mr. Neufeld. In his absence, unfortunately, I'm still going to make the statement that we're going to deny his request for the refund of the filing fees. And the reason for that is that the board does not have the authority to deal with filing fees. They're non-refundable as per council order, and therefore we will not be addressing his request in our order. So we will continue with the hearing, and we'll have you swear the applicant in, please.
Okay.
Which property are we dealing with first?
I think it's just this vacant park, so right, the last one.
Is that correct? And that's the only property you're dealing with?
That's the only one I got.
Okay, I'll have you swear both parties in, please.
This is the bottom one
Will swear. Please state your name.
Matthew Stephen Brokers.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Sorry.
Please state your name.
Marcelo Navarro.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
So we're gonna do the last one on the brackets. Morning, Mr. Navarro.
Morning.
You're representing the owners of roll number 0309300270, is that correct?
Correct.
And it's just the amount of value that we're dealing with?
You want to speak to it?
Yeah, I'll speak to it. So, the issue with this property is that the applicant doesn't actually own the property, 2018 and 2019. This was discovered the last minute. Basically, what I want to do is I'll hand this out. Marcel and I talked about this yesterday and in between. The status of title, it's a waterway in a development, water impoundment. So essentially, I'll just give you some history. This property has been owned by the city of Winnipeg since 8/28/2017. What happened was there was a larger piece of land where there was a replot done effective 8/28/2017. So a bigger piece was split up. Those are the subs that we're looking at today that are under appeal. Now, in that replot, ownership of the waterway, water impoundments, this park, roll number we're looking at was passed to the city of Winnipeg. So, as the process goes, it takes some time for the replat to get processed and pushed out. So, supplementary notices were issued when the replat was complete in December of 2018. That's what's under appeal today. However, the title wasn't switched over until it was discovered last week that it needed to be done. Now, I don't take part in the title process. That's still being worked out. So basically, what we're looking at here is an appeal on the property that's no longer, the applicant doesn't own the property for the reference years they're appealing for.
So it's technically City of Winnipeg owned.
It's the city's owned it since 8/28/2007.
And it's therefore exempt from taxation.
It's, yeah, so the applicant is not the owner. Adjustments are in the process of going out. So this was discovered. Why it says Hopewell Bishop Grandin is because in between the time when I drew this up and then yesterday when I went to go review Mr. Navarro's evidence, that's when The adjustment was put through, and it was discovered yesterday when I started my review of his stuff. So that's why this is coming through at the 11th hour.
So it's, the ownership is the city of Winnipeg, but
Right.
who occupies this parcel?
Who occupies this parcel? Well, right now it's just vacant land. It's owned by the city. It's been owned by the city since 2017, so it's the city's property.
Okay, and prior to that, it was,
It was Hopewell Development, but when the larger piece of land was split up, the waterway in the replot was given to the city of Winnipeg as per the land title, which I just handed out, so they're the owner.
But the appeal was filed, right?
Yeah, because we incorrectly issued them a notice, and so then they looked at it, and on their end, I guess they didn't catch it either, so they just appealed it, same.
Yeah, I think what happened is that they just automatically appealed it receiving that supplementary. And I guess what Matthew's saying is that the supplementary actually shouldn't have gone out.
So do you have to withdraw the
What we're gonna ask
application?
for is actually a 54-1, because there is the small
By
chance that.
You have
54
no
won't-
standing.
by 54-1, you're talking confirmation of the assessment?
That's right, because you alluded to the fact that who is the occupier of this parcel. So that is still something that I'm not completely 100% sure of, and there is that portion of the act which mentions that an occupier still can be taxed. So from our perspective, it would be safer for us just to confirm it, and we'll deal and rectify the supplementary issues, either through a supplement, an additional supplementary, or eventually we'll have to file an MMB appeal just to cover our bases again.
I think we better take another quick recess here, please. Before you do that, is it the same situation with the remainder of these
No.
vacant parcels?
No.
Thank you.
We are back on, yeah.
Okay, I'll call the hearing back to order. In this particular case, we're going to adjourn this property in order to seek legal counsel. So we will deal no further on this particular property. And is this the only property we're dealing with? Mr.
Yes,
Barakas?
that's my only one.
Okay. Thank you. So you're back on the hot seat, Mr.
Back to the
Weinstein?
end, yep.
And you've already been sworn in?
I've already been sworn in, yes.
Okay, see you guys later.
Now, the remainder of these properties are all of yours, Mr. Navarro?
Correct.
Is there any preference in the order that we deal with these by either party?
I think we can go by the list.
We'll just go as they're stated then, so the next property we're going to deal with is 03093002-785.
The owner of this property is Hopewell Bishop Grandin Development. It's for roll year 2018. This is a vacant industrial land. The land area is 915,943 square feet. If you turn to page 2, you can get an idea of what the subject property looks like. It's a vacant parcel, obviously irregularly shaped. Page 3 just gives you another view of it and some more clarity. It's located on near Bishop Grandin. There's a new development going in there. It's kind of sandwiched between Chevrier, Bishop Grandin, and Waverly. Give you an idea if you've ever driven past there before. The zoning on page 4 is M2, general manufacturing. So as says, the district is intended to provide light manufacturing, processing, services, storage, wholesale, and distribution operations with limited outdoor operation and storage. Turning to page 6, you can see the comparables. The subject is in the first column, and the 4 comparables are in the subsequent columns. So comparable number 2 is 1420 Waverly Street, fairly close to the subject property. It's got a land area of 207,777. It's sold in March of 2016 for $2.45 million, with a sale price per square foot of $11.79. Comparable 3 is 1450 Waverly. Actually, it neighbors the other comparable property. Its land area is 279,432 square feet. It's zoned M2 as well, and it's sold on February 2014 for $2,975,000 for $10.65 per square foot. Comparable 4 is on Hutchins Street. That's in the Inkster Industrial Park. That's 319,276 square feet of land. It's sold in January 15 for $2,199,999, and for $6.89 per square foot. And comparable number 5 is on Wilkes. It's sold in January 14 for January of 2014 for $1,800,000. M2 General Manufacturing, and its land area is 157,621 square feet for a sale price of $11.42 per square foot. For the land valuation of this property, if you look below, we're using a net rent of $7.03, which is model driven. If you turn to page 7, you can see what comparable 1 and 2 look like. Those are the 2 along Waverly. They're neighboring properties. It also has that inlet street that borders it, and it also is bordered by Clarence. And page 8 has the other 2 comparables. You can take a look. The top one is the one in the Inkster Industrial Park. And then the bottom one is the one on Wilkes Avenue, kinda near Keniston, sorta near where the golf dome is. And page 9 just shows the cost and liability allocations. And then page 10 is the Municipal Assessment Act. And we feel that the value of $6,441,000 is fair assessment and should be confirmed.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions for the applicant, or sorry, for the assessor?
Yes. Have you inspected this site?
I have driven through it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell me anything about the site that stood out?
It's the site that stood out. Well, I was able to drive through it, so there are all roads in it.
There are roads.
It's got a retention pond.
Okay.
They're now doing, this is obviously post-reference, but they're now constructing a multifamily residence on it, so those are kind of things that struck out to me.
Okay. Are you aware of any contamination issues on this site?
I'm aware, actually looking at your brief, when I was looking for that, you were stating that there is contamination of, was it beach, or what was it again?
Lime mud.
Lime, that's right, lime, yes. So I'm aware of it now, yes.
Okay. Now, do any of your comparables have contamination issues?
I do have one. The one in Hutchins Street does have contaminated soil issues.
Okay. And would you have made any adjustments based on the size difference of the lots? Yours are actually significantly smaller than the subject.
Yeah, that's true. The problem is there's not a lot of land sales.
Okay.
And I feel that, as you can see, ours is on the lower end compared to all these ones which are higher, except for the ones on Hutching, which is in Inkster, which is considered an inferior location and is contaminated soil. So I feel that for the square footage of this one, it is a fair value at $7 per square foot.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you say that it was on the list of contaminated?
Yes, we have it as contaminated soil.
Okay. So based on the size of the subject property, and looking at the comparables, the subject is, probably about 3 times as large as any of the comparables, eh? Roughly?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah. So, average-wise, for, the price per acre, you're at, say, 307 an acre, eh? 307,000 an acre. That's where
Okay.
it works out to be.
Sure.
So, it's quite conservative, so I'm thinking, but you should be probably around maybe close to maybe 500. But on the comparables, are any of them contaminated sites?
Just the Hutchings.
Just Hutchings, eh?
Yeah, just the.
And that's the low at $300,000 an acre, eh?
And also the location.
Yeah.
That's in Inkster Industrial Park, north of North City. So land prices tend to be a lot higher in the south part of the city.
So in your value, you think that it's fair?
I think our value is fair. We look at what the prices per square foot is going for land in the south end of the city.
I thank you, sir.
Gil? Ms. Nesbitt?
No questions.
Your land influences, you've got heavy traffic on the two on Waverly, but the subject doesn't have heavy traffic?
No, it doesn't, because there's no traffic at the moment. They're constructing. There's, as you can see, the vacant land, there's nothing there, there's no traffic coming in except for truck traffic to build, to construct.
Okay.
So
and the-
Waverly is obviously a built-up area.
And are the two on Waverly, do they have access directly off Waverly, or are they just addressed as Waverly?
They're just addresses Waverly. As you can see, there is a street there where they can exit out of.
So why would that be considered heavy traffic then? Is it not the same situation as the subject?
The subject property is off of Bishop Grandin and off of Waverly, so it doesn't get the same noise as you get on Waverly. Waverly does have high traffic running by it all the time.
And as far as the contaminated soil on Hutchings, do you know what the contamination is?
You know what, I actually do not know what the contamination is.
But it is listed with the province?
True.
But the subject property, you're not, did you check?
The subject property has been remediated, so there was lime mud, but it has since been remediated.
My questions, thank you. Mr. Navarro, you can hear me, please.
So I'll first start off with the site and the property description where this development is located. You can see by the picture there that it's located near Waverly and Bishop Grandin. This used to be the old sugar beet plant. Just to give you some background on the sugar beet plant, so one of the byproducts of manufacturing sugar out of sugar beets is this thing we call lime mud, and that's what the assessor spoke of in terms of remediation. So lime mud is a byproduct of this. And you can see by the overhead picture that there's a road system that's coming in there, and that's partly also to grant access into the site for construction. But I think what we first have to speak of in terms of the site itself is timing. Where is this development in perspective to other developments? So the assessor just commented that the site has been remediated. I can tell you that is not correct. The remediation is still going on. It will probably continue to go on into late 2019, if not 2020. And the reason for it is just the extent of the remediation itself. I don't know what the other sites entailed, but the lime mud removal from this, you can see the pictures in the back on page 8 and page 9. These are lime mud deposits. And these are immense deposits. We've heard estimates of anywhere from 200,000 to 500,000 cubic meters. Cubic meters, if you take 500,000 cubic meters and cubic yards, that's about 750,000 cubic yards. Your average dump truck is about 10 to 14 cubic meters. So do the math, think about how much contamination that actually is. But we can still tell you that remediation is still going on. Part of the reason for not involving costs in this is because, again, a lot of that is still going on, and a lot of it frankly happened after the reference date. But it's a significant expense that, again, is still going on. In terms of highest and best use, you can turn to page 4. I don't think we can argue highest and best use. We know what this is going to become in the future. There's a clear plan laid out. There's an approved plan of subdivision. There's a master plan for this area, but timing and phasing is where things differ in terms of value. So is this at the beginning of the phasing, or is it at the end of the phasing? So if you consider the phasing of this project to be a 10 to 15 year period, which is what it's supposed to be, we're at the beginning of that. In my sales comparables, I use some of the same sales comparables as the assessor, and frankly, there's not too much in terms of comparable to this type of subdivision. This is a new type of development. There's some barriers to it, but the scale of it is different than what we have in terms of sales, and we only have so many sales to work with. So those are the sales comparables that I used. Some of them are at the low end of about $150,000 an acre. At the high end, they're about $500,000 an acre. And the reason, obviously, is different factors. There's locational factors, conditional factors, what type of development you're dealing with. And I think that's where some of the differences lie in some other subdivisions, some other projects. When you're dealing with a subdivision where you're converting a brownfield into a development, you're going to incur some expenses in that remediation, and I think the scale of the lime mud deposits there will tell you that there's still a lot to do here. So in terms of the commentary that I've had, that I made here, there's three specific items that I want to deal with. Now, I would consider this development not built up. And by that I mean, if you look at other developments, all the residential around it is built up. This development is just starting on the residential, meaning that a lot of this is still years away from development. And I've put a 1 to 2 year estimate horizon on there. I know that's wrong. I've spoken to the developer since then, and because of the delays, these timelines are out the door. So what would have been maybe 1 to 2 years is probably 5 to 6 years away from fruition now. So there's three important things I think to consider. One is that it's really not a built-up area. There's not high traffic flow through here. You're waiting for that residential development to actually occur, as opposed to others where the residential development is already there. Secondly, I've remediated, I mentioned the remediation of the lime mud, which is still going on. And site preparation, that is still going on. This is not a subdivision or a site that is going to be built on anytime soon. So a couple of important points to think about is, if you're a prudent investor, are you going to pay the same amount of money for a site that's still being remediated as you would for a site that doesn't require that? I think the answer is simple, and that's kind of why I've gone to the low end of the scale on my comparables. Also, there is the question of the size differential. Now, I've mentioned one of the properties here at 330 Mazenode. It's starting to approach the comparable at 15.85 acres. That one sold in 2016 for $165,000 an acre. Now, there is some locational difference. I'll grant that. But I don't think it's that significant at this point. And I think the real important thing to take from this is what would that prudent investor pay for this? And I think because this issue is still ongoing, I think that would be reflective. I would mention that there's no sales here. And there's a reason for that, because, again, this process is still going on the remediation. Until that's complete, there's not gonna be a sale. So I find it hard to compare that to other sites that could be easily developed versus this, which has these issues. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Levins, any questions for the applicant?
Yes, in terms of the remediation, you said that it started in 2015, it's an ongoing process. So they have remediated some of the sites.
They've remediated some of it. Yeah, it's still
With
ongoing.
this, with this specific site, the one that we're looking at right now, has it been remediated? Is it complete? Are there any complete?
I would say that from the developer's perspective, they're not really concerned at how these parcels are subdivided or how they're treated by the assessment department. They're looking at the overall costs of the development itself. So one of the indicators of that is that none of the parcels have sold. Those costs will have to be recovered at some point if these properties are sold off.
So you're speaking from the perspective of a developer.
Yeah.
And you say this was the plan that they came up with for it as the developer, but for somebody who is buying the property, this is what would be sold to them, right?
Well, I think in its current condition, I would say that a purchaser would have to take that remediation into account, because again, it's still going
But
on.
but my question, I guess, is has this specific one been fully remediated? Because if it's been going on
No,
since.
they're still digging up parts of that. I mean, if you look at the lime mud deposits, those are lying along that land.
Are they lying along this specific property or just in the general area is what I'm asking? This is a very large area with
Yes,
lots of large
yes.
parcels, so.
It's in the general area.
So, but it might not specifically be on
No,
this
it
parcel.
might not specifically be in that area.
Okay, so this one could be remediated already.
I can't speak to that.
Okay. In terms of your comparables, you mentioned the one of Mazzino as probably something coming closer to what you were using as a comparable for the subject property due to its size. Would the zoning of M3 heavy manufacturing have something to do with the lower sale price as well? Seeing as all the ones in here are M2, I believe?
I think I actually have a picture of that site. So, I do. I can pass this along. It's a picture of the site itself. So this would be the area of the new St. Boniface industrial area that's being developed. And as you can see, all around it, there's sites that are being developed at different sizes. Some for M2, some for M3. This is a larger site, so it's an M3 development. You can see some residential development appearing along it too, so it's at that stage where it's starting to develop into, I think, what our subject wants to be at. And that's where I'm talking about timing also, is that in terms of timing, we're not even there yet.
So this site sold as vacant land in 2016?
Yeah,
So were there services put in then when it sold?
I would assume that this was part of a plan of subdivision that had services put in, yes.
But we don't know.
We're not 100% sure, yeah.
Also looking at your comparables, the ones that are in the same Boniface Park, all of them, including the one we just spoke of, come in quite a bit lower than the ones that are closer to the subject property, such as on Waverly, or even the Hutchings one. So would you say land prices out in the same Boniface area are good comparables for the south end of the city, such as Bishop Granite Crossing?
I would look at this area and see that it's actually close to Lajimodi, it's on Dougal. I would think that there's high traffic in that area. Certainly, it doesn't have the traffic flow of Bishop Brandon.
So in your opinion, why is there such a discrepancy in prices for two different parts of the city?
Why is there such a discrepancy?
Sure,
in
yeah,
prices?
you're looking, when you look at the Waverly ones, they're selling, or even the Kennison one as well, it's selling for much higher price per square foot or per acre than the
Sure,
ones.
and there's size differentials here also. We're talking about 21 acres versus 4 acres, 6 acres, 7 acres. And again, the only one that's approaching that size of an acreage is Mazenot. So, I mean, that price is discounting as it gets larger.
Yes, but even the ones such as on Chamomile or on, let's see here, where's the other one, even Hutchings and they're all very similar, and you got one here, sorry, that's got no name on it, but it's in the same area. They're all very similar square footage as the one in Waverly, but they're selling for substantially less.
Yeah, and I would say about Waverly is that probably it doesn't have any type of remediation issues. It's ready to go, it's a small parcel. Whereas here you're dealing with 21 acres, you're dealing with the remediation of the entire development. I don't think it's apples to apples.
Right, so, because St. Boniface and the Bishop.
You're asking if there's a locational difference.
Right,
Yeah, there would be a locational difference.
right, so.
Yeah. But it wouldn't be double,
Right.
I think.
But, right, which is why we're at $7 a square foot for the city and not up around 11 or 10, such as on.
Yeah,
Waverly.
I mean, I dealt with acreages here. I mean, I dealt with $196,000 an acre, which is what I was recommending, versus Mazenot, which is at $165,000 an acre.
Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Navarro, how did you conclude value for the subject property at 196,000 an acre?
So there's no really good explanation as to how I came up with that value. So
Why?
I looked at the high and the low. I looked at the high and the low of the samples that I have, okay? And I also took into consideration the size of the property. So when I was discounting the price of the property, I was, first of all, size of the property, does it have contamination issues?
So basically, I want to know how you came to that figure. But
So,
where
yeah.
where did you start from?
So
And then go down?
yeah, so I would have started probably at about the midpoint of the sample.
And that could be the 300,000?
Yeah, that could be the 300,000.
Okay.
And then I just started looking at, well, how does my site differ and what do I need to discount?
So the only comparable that you have that is contaminated is Hutchings. So that's
Hutchins-
at 300,000 an acre.
That's at 300,000 an acre, but it's also 7.3 acres.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. And I like the biggest acreage you have is about 16,000.
Yeah,
16, pardon me.
16 acres.
Not thousand.
yeah, yeah.
So you worked your way from that point down,
Yes.
and that's how you concluded value?
Yeah, and that is my interpretation. Obviously, somebody else can have a different interpretation. But I mean,
Depends on whether you're buying or selling. eh?
exactly. And, you know, if I'm starting out at 300,000 with a lot that's, you know, a third the size, I'm not gonna stay at 300,000.
So my last question would be, the approximate cost for the $21,000 for it to be, cleaned up?
The approximate cost of the 21,000, what do you mean?
21 acres, I'm sorry.
Well, that's distributed amongst the entire development.
Yeah.
So, You have no issues that it's after the reference date? So the total remediation, once it's done, will hit about 13.5 million.
Timeframe?
Timeframe from about 2016 to probably 2020,
Okay.
with most of it probably coming after the reference date.
Mhm. But as you're cleaning the property, the value is gonna go up.
As you're finished with the cleaning,
Okay.
the value's gonna go up.
Okay. I thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I was just trying to understand, why did you start with 300,000 an acre? Like, you could have started pretty much anywhere. Or are you thinking that,
Contamination? So I'm using another comparable that has contamination in it.
and then you're just discounting it for size after
size.
that?
Yeah.
But what about location?
Location
Being
is the
a-
unknown because we don't, I mean, I can't answer that.
We've agreed that,
Certainly, I agree, there probably is a locational factor that I'm not maybe fully recognizing here. But, would it be at $500,000 an acre? No, I don't think so.
no, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I think, there's no doubt that the price of this land will go up at some point. Any prudent investor will know that the price of that land will go up once the remediation is done. That said, that's still ongoing, so if you were looking at it from the purchaser's perspective, and even from the developer's perspective, they haven't let any of this land go. But from the purchaser's perspective, would they pay the same amount for a parcel of what I would call greenfield versus a parcel that is still being remediated?
And to clarify, the specific, you're unaware of the specific parcel, roll number that we're dealing with now.
So,
You're not aware if it's
here's-
fully
here's-
remediated,
Yeah.
but the entire property is still under remediation.
Exactly, because those charges, I mean, to the developer, it's really not important where those costs are coming from. It's being distributed over the entire development. So they're not gonna call up the assessment department and ask them, you know, where are the lines here so we can price out this land according to how you guys view it? No, they're
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, they're distributing those costs through the entire subdivision.
Thank you.
So this particular parcel we're dealing with right now, has its own title?
I believe these are all titled differently, yeah.
So
Yeah,
actually, this parcel could be sold today. Is that not correct?
it could be sold. Whether you would buy it is another question. Yeah, I mean, maybe you're hoping that you're gonna get a discount because the remediation is still going on. Yeah.
So-
I can't fully answer that though, because, I mean, I don't know what the developer, the owner would do. Would they sell it off at that point? Could they? Understanding that probably the terms of the financing for this development probably require that to be completed.
But you don't know that for certain, you're speculating there.
The financing, I think that's, so one of the tasks that we do as, on this subdivision from our perspective at Altus Group is we inspect this for the scheduling, and that's for the financing. So the bank wants to know how its money is being used and making sure that those schedules are actually being met. So we have somebody on site every month inspecting this site, and that is directly reporting to the lender to see that this work is being done. So, no, for 100%, I can't answer, you know, say that that is correct, that the lender would stop them from selling it until that's remediated, but I would think that's part of the terms. That's my speculation.
Okay, and the current owner purchased this entire parcel?
I don't have a record of that sale, do you?
I don't have it with me.
Yeah, it goes back a long way.
Long way, 5 years, 10
More-
years?
More than 5 years, I would say. Because typically the sales show up in your spreadsheets, don't they?
For this parcel, yeah, I did not see a sale for that particularly large parcel, so.
Okay. But this particular parcel is serviced, there's roadways, there's sewer, water,
Servicing is still going on.
for the
and-
entire site.
Yeah, so,
So
If you
these
look at
these other parcels that we're dealing with after this are all part of this as well?
as you get closer, yes, yeah, as you get closer to Bishop Brandon, more of the servicing is done,
Right,
okay? As you get further away from it, less of the servicing is done, and you can actually see it in the overhead pictures. So there's still, plows on site, there's still scraping. There are some services that are in, but that's still ongoing in certain parts of it. And this is further away from Bishop Brandon.
is there access to this site from Chevrolet as well?
So there is access, but it is a mud road, so it's really only intended for the construction crews and the people that are working on the site.
So it's not part of the development plan to have access or egress from there as well?
I think the overhead will show there, no, I don't think so, actually. I think it's closed off.
I thought any new development had to have at least 2 access egress.
Yeah. It doesn't show it here. I think I have a master plan here or something, just to make sure.
Okay, maybe not to Chevrolet, but then to Waverly?
It will be going to Waverly. I'm not sure.
No, I think there is a road heading on to Chevrolet. And there is a new system or a road that's gonna be created onto Waverly also, yeah.
But as of now, to the best of your knowledge, that doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist.
Those are my questions, thank you. Desire for summation on this particular property, or do you want to save it till we deal with all of these properties, or,
I have no summation on
Okay.
this property.
Mr. Navarro, same option for you if you want to do a summation on this property, or if you want to do
I
it at
think
the
what I'll
end,
do
or?
is a summation at the end of all of these.
Certainly. Okay, then we'll move on to the next one on the docket, roll number ending in 2790.
Okay. The assessed value for this property is $5,997,000. It is a vacant industrial land. The land area is 848,137 square feet. Again, if you turn to page 2, you can see the layout of the property. And also on page 3, there's a closer look. And just speaking to the remediation, from looking at these pictures, it seems like it's already been scraped, at least from the topsoil portion of it. And this is taken in 2016, I believe. So, and then the zoning's M2. And heading to page 6, you can see the comparables. The comparables are the same as the comparables that we went over last time. So again, the price per acre for comparable 2 is $513,637 per acre. For comparable 3 is $463,766. Comparable 4 is 318,000, comparable 5 is 497, 446. And again, it's a similar rent per square foot for this property at $7.07. And then again, on page 7 and 8, you can see the pictures of the comparable properties. They are the same as last time. And on page 10, there is the municipal assessment act. And so basically, the same argument last time for this one, seeing that it is very similar in square footage, similar rate per square foot. It's directly across from the property we were looking at before. So again, I feel that this property should be confirmed at $5,997,000.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions?
Yeah. Just looking at, and again, this is talking about the size differential. You don't think that there's a do you think that there should be a difference in the price per square foot or the acre, or the price per acre based on size?
Yeah, I would agree on that. And I think that we are seeing that again in my comparables, where the comparables are much higher than the mall rent that we produce.
And Hutchings would be different because of the location?
Hutchings would be different because of the location, yes.
Okay. So Wilkes says 11, okay. Now, in terms of, again, in terms of contamination, there's no, there's, Hutchings is the only contaminated site?
That is the only one I have on my list.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill? Mr. Merrick?
No, sir.
Ms. Nesbitt?
So I just have a question. You indicated that the previous property, it reflected contamination in the price per square foot.
No, sorry, no, I was just, you were talking about me speaking to the picture. I felt I should have referenced that this land has obviously been scraped and cleared. Now, whether or not that is the remediation,
I see.
I can't say.
Okay.
But there's obviously, I'm just trying to point out, there's obviously been work done on
Some
this
work
land.
done.
Some work done on this
Okay.
land. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just wondering why this thing.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thank you, that's fine.
So you're saying that the rate that's applied does not take into consideration the contamination? Thank you. Mr. Navarro?
As you can see, just as the assessor presented the same evidence from the previous appeal, I am presenting the same evidence for this appeal. Again, these are two industrial parcels. They're larger parcels. If you look at the pictures, at the very last picture, actually on the very last page, and that is a picture facing the site. And you can see how certain things have been marked off there. You can also see some piping lying on the ground there. So, as you can see on this particular section, not all services are there. So it's even further along than the last site that we looked at. In terms of a price per acre, I use the same acreage rate that I used for the previous one, and again, that's based on discounting for the size and for the contamination.
Mr. Lobenstein, questions for the applicant?
Just similar to the other one, could this site potentially have already been remediated?
Potentially, yeah. I can't answer that 100%.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick,
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Nesbitt? And I have no questions. Yep. That will bring us to roll number ending in 2756.
Or 55.
One moment.
55.
55.
Yeah, so the assessed value of this property is 2 million,
Sorry, could I get you to read the entire roll?
oh, sorry, I
number,
thought
please?
that's, okay, my mistake. The roll number is 0309300275. The assessed value is 2,727,000. This one is a vacant commercial. Its land area is 167,891. So if you turn to page 2, you can see the parcel there. It's fairly rectangular with a slight irregular shape at one of the corners. Page 3 is another picture of it. And then if you look at page 4, there's a zoning as a CMU, commercial mixed use. So this district is intended to provide for community service, mixed use development in a higher scale that is appropriate for neighborhood locations. I'll just read the first sentence of it there. So looking at the comparables, these ones are different because they're BCom, they're not VINDU, than we were looking at previously. The subject is the last one here, going for $16.24 per square foot. Comparable number 1 is on Keniston. It has a land area of 519,742 square feet. For a sale price per square foot of $13.77. The next one is 400 Northtown, that's in Bridgewater. It has a land area of 435,573 square feet for $7.22 per square foot. The last two are on Sterling Lloyd. They're side by side to each other, and they have a price of $16.30 per square foot, $14.92 per square foot. They have a land area of 281,390 and 217,775 square feet. If you look at page 7, you can see the lots. The one on Keniston, this is the one that became the Lowe's eventually. And the comparable sale number 2, that's in Northtown, that's in Bridgewater. It's a development now for commercial. Page 8 and 9 are interesting because these are further down from IKEA. I believe one became the Cabela's there. But if you look at the basically the road around it, it isn't completed. So this would be like considered unserviced, similar to the subject properties that we're looking at now, as them not being serviced. So, and they did sell for $16.30 per square foot and $492. $16.30 per square foot and $14.92 per square foot, which is close to the $16.24 that the subject is assessed at. So we feel that the assessed value of $2,727,000 is fair and equitable.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions?
So, in terms of this particular parcel, there wouldn't have been any adjustment or any looking at the remediation aspect of this, okay? Now, do any of these have any issues with contamination?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Now, are any of these in built-up areas?
In terms of the Bridgewater one, that's, definitely right in the middle of a residential area.
Well, and I don't mean just, in this case, I just don't mean residential built-up areas, but there's also considerable commercial build-ups in this area, right?
I would say the Keniston Boulevard
So
one.
these areas are much further along in terms of how they've been developed than say the subject.
I think for comparable 3 and 4 is a good indication of where they were at when they sold. That's not very built up. If you look at the pictures, the roads aren't in yet, the services aren't in for comparable 3 and comparable 4. So, yes, two of them were built up, the Keniston and I guess Bridgewater to an extent, but I would say the Sterling One Parkway was not built up at that time.
Okay. I don't know if I should, it's not really rebuttal evidence, but it is pictures that I'm using, so can I hand this out now?
Use comparables?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So, and it goes for all 3 roll numbers, so,
You've got extras.
yeah, I've got extras there.
Maybe just give it to the assessor first to make sure he has no issues with it.
Just in case you all want it.
She likes the ball line.
I know, you do.
Okay, these are fine.
Yep. So you've listed this as rebuttal, but it's not really rebuttal, it's just for clarification.
Yeah, it's
on-
just for clarification, yeah.
So there's really nothing you want to present, you just wanted to,
Well, in speaking, in questioning the assessor, so we can see that the first few comparables, there's some built-up areas, right?
Would agree.
Okay, okay. So, comparable 1 and 2, it clearly shows that there's built-up areas there. If you look at comparable 3, many of you probably know this as that area along Sterling Line, the idea that area that has been continuously moving westerly for some time. Again, I don't know what services were there, I don't even remember when Cabela's was actually built, but it's been there for some time. And again, that's where I try and distinguish between where these developments are and one is built up, one is not. Would you say that there's anything built up around this subject? Like in terms of residential development, is there a market there for these properties, just around that development?
Okay, well, if you're asking 2 questions, you're asking if there's development and you're asking if there's residential. So Chevrier Waverly development, right, is that residential? No.
Okay,
So,
that's, yeah, he's answered my question.
okay. So you're going to present,
Yeah, I'm presenting now the brief. Okay. As you can see in the overhead picture on page 2, this is a 3.9 acre parcel. The VCOM, so this is vacant commercial land. Adjacent to the water pond, land drainage. And it's slated for commercial mixed use, so this can be variable uses that fit that commercial mixed use zoning. There's usually a residential element that can come in there, but it's commercial mixed use. Highest and best use on page 4, you can see that there's no real question about what this will become. It's some type of commercial application. Based on the sales comparison, I've used several comparables here ranging between 3 acres and 11 acres, or nearly 12 acres, and ranging between 450,000, just over 450,000 an acre, to over $1 million. Do I think the 1 million is applicable? I don't. I think the mid-range for these parcels is probably in that $600,000 an acre. And then given that, again, we may have a disagreement on the remediation and how it's applied, but again, remediation for the entire development is still going on. And what I would say is that the residential development in this area is starting, so we're not even at the point where there's a market for this type of development. So I think the 600,000 is more reflective of the value of the property.
Thank you. Mr. Levinstein?
Okay, I'm gonna turn to the rebuttal evidence on page 5. So you've taken a picture of what's built up there right now. Do you have a picture of what was built up there when that land sale happened?
No, I don't. And
So would you say that this development is fairly comparable to what's being developed at Bishop Grandin Crossing in terms of the mixed use, the residential, the commercial? This one incorporates retail, might not have the vindu, or the industrial aspect to it, but.
I think the two will be similar developments. I think in terms of the timing, I think we're further behind on the Hopewell development. And maybe that's not reflective of what was there at the time of the sale, but I know from this development that this development was further along, even when this parcel of land sold.
Okay.
So that's where the difference lies.
I think those are all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Nesbitt?
I have none.
I have none, thank you. Now, these photos you wanted us to retain for the other properties too, or not? Just for this?
I provided extras in there because they all, I chose all 3 roll numbers there.
Okay.
We're using the same comps for all
I'll
3.
be using the same comps for the last 2 as
Yeah.
well, so
Okay.
it's.
Okay, that my glasses on, so we should be able to get this roll number right. Ending in 2745.
Correct.
So if you would give us the entire roll number.
Roll number 030930002745. Assessed value $8,839,000. This is vacant commercial land. It's got a land area of 580,911 square feet. Again, page 3 shows a picture of it. And same with page 2 and 3 both show pictures of the land. Page 4 is the zoning, and it is commercial mixed use. Page 6 are the same comparables, and again, I just wanted to talk about comparable 3 and 4, how they were unserviced, similar to the property now at the time of sale. And in terms of our land value rate, we have $5.22 per square foot at 580,911 square feet for a land value of $8,839,000. And page 7 and page 8 have the pictures, and page 9 have the pictures of the comparable sales as before. And on the back is the Municipal Assessment Act extra. So I would just like to say that this property is, now that this property is fair and equitable, and that it should be confirmed.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, question for the assessor?
These are the same land sales?
Yes.
Can you tell me what the land was prior to this, prior to these properties being purchased?
What the land was?
Yeah, like what designation did it have on it? Was it agricultural land? Was it zoned differently?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure the Kinnison Boulevard one was probably zoned commercial. As you said, it's a built-up area.
Okay.
The other two I do not know.
And the Bridgewater?
Bridgewater is in a residential area, like you said, it was built up as well, so I'm sure it was zoned commercial would be.
So on this issue of, and I think we got into it previously, this issue of greenfield versus brownfield. Are you aware of the differences between a greenfield development and a brownfield development?
Are you talking like agriculture to basically commercial or to do, yes?
Versus a former industrial site to a development?
Right.
So would you say that Bridgewater was a greenfield, former agricultural land?
At one time, yes.
Okay.
Maybe not at the sale though,
Okay.
so
What would it have been at the time of the sale?
it probably would have been commercial. It probably, that would have been the development for, very similar to what's happening now. They've already scraped the land and they've.
I guess what I'm getting at is that those lands would never have incurred the type of expenses in terms of remediation than the Hopewell site would have. Is that correct?
I don't know if they were contaminated or not, or if remediation happened. That's something I don't know if that happened.
You don't know about contamination issues in Bridgewater?
No, I don't.
Okay. Aren't those primarily residential developments?
They are.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Nesbitt? I have none, thank you. So that will bring us to the last property we have to deal with.
He needs to present.
You want to,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Navarro. Thank you for
Thank you.
interrupting me.
This is basically the same presentation as the previous one.
I'm sorry for jumping the gun.
Yeah, so it's okay. So I've made a discount on this one, and this is based on the size differential. So this is a slightly larger parcel than the previous one. The previous one was around 3, maybe 4 acres. This one is about 13 acres. So there's a slight discount based on the size. And second, in terms of the commentary, again, we're dealing with an issue of, are we comparing apples to oranges? When we're introducing comparables that are from, for example, Center Street, Bridgetown, or Bridgewater Estates, we know, even I know that those are greenfield development, former agricultural lands. So those expenses that our subject is incurring would not have been there. So that's where I think that the prudent investor would look at this slightly differently at this point when the remediation of the overall development is still going on. And again, there is a slight difference in terms of the size overall. So I've valued it at a slightly lower rate of $479,000 per acre.
what's the figure again?
479,023.
Bottom of page 5.
got here some different figures here. Yes, you have on your front sheet there 6,671,000 requesting, and you have a different figure on page 5.
Aye.
Right,
Let me just do the math here.
That's why I'm wondering, when I cranked out the price per square foot, it was different.
Okay.
So-
479, 023 times 13.3. It's 6,371. It's a typo.
So are you going with what figure?
It's-
6?
I think I put a 6 in there instead of a 3.
This is an error.
Okay, well, that's an error, okay. Okay, so just so I know here. So the figure per square foot was 479,
79,000.
Per acre.
no, per square foot.
No, per acre.
Per square,
479,000 per acre.
sorry, yes, okay. Yes, okay, good, thank you. Okay,
Does that conclude your presentation? Mr. Lobenstein?
Sure, I guess the question I have is sort of how you came to that number using 479 per acre when all of your comparables, except for one, are well over that price?
So, yes. And that, the reasoning for that is that there's been an adjustment based on the size. That would be the first thing. The second thing that I've done throughout all of these properties, whether it's industrial or commercial, is that I've discounted the property overall because of the remediation issue. Now, whether you take that as an actual issue that affects value, that's up to you to make, but that is the reasoning for discounting the rate. So one would be size, the other one would be the remediation.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
I have done, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Nesbit?
I have none.
I think questions have been asked and answered the previous property, so I have no further questions. Desire for a summation?
Not this one.
You have one more to do.
No, we don't. We dealt with that first.
Okay.
We
No,
Did we do
No,
it?
there is more,
Still have
one more.
5-0.
and 50.
Number.
Okay, I'm sorry, one more, 5-0. So if you'd read that one in,
Sure.
full number, please.
Roll number 030930022750. There's an address for 225 Market Boulevard. The assessed value is $6,586,000. It's vacant commercial land, and the zoning is considered commercial mixed use. Page 2 and page 3 have the pictures. Again, the zoning is on page 4. We've gone over the comparables twice now, so they're on page 6. And again, the properties are on pictures of properties are on page 7, 8, and 9. And page 11 has the Municipal Assessment Act. Again, it's the same issues as the other one. The argument's not any different, so I just feel that this property should be confirmed and at $6,586,000, which is a fair and equitable value.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions for the assessor?
I don't have any questions for the assessor. Yeah.
Mr. Merrick?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Nesbit?
No.
And I have none. Navarro, your view, please.
Yes, so I would, turn to page 2. You can see that this property now has a civic address on it. It's 225 Market Boulevard. I've also made mention in here about a variance, I believe, that is going, so there's an application, I guess, to develop this site now. So it is further along than most of the other sites, much further along, with the exception of the residential development that's going on. So in terms of the discount, I really haven't discounted it that much. We're actually not that far apart in terms of overall value. The only difference is again, there's no, variances haven't been approved. So we're not at that point yet where, you know, everything is set in stone and they can go and build whatever they want to build on this property. And that's the only reason that there is a slight difference there, is because those things haven't been approved yet.
Thank you. Mr. Augustine?
I guess, just my only question for it is, would that mean that this site has been remediated, this specific one?
I can't speak to that also. As you know, I've mentioned that there's still a lot of remediation going on. Whether it's specific to this site, I can't answer that. I would say probably of any of the sites, and we'll leave the residential one out that's being developed. This one is as close to being developed as any other. The other ones are still far away from development. The fact that it has a civic address on there shows that it's getting close to that point. The fact that somebody has applied for a variance on the development of something also shows that there's interest in this site. But to tell you the truth, there's really not that much of a difference between our values, I think.
Is there any questions? Mr. Mayor?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
And I have none, thank you. Let me just check my list. Okay, so, once again, if you wanted to give us a brief summation,
Sure.
it would apply to all of these properties we've just dealt with.
And I'll just cover in the remediation portion of it, that remediation might be ongoing, but these specific sites, as we've seen, the land has been scraped, could very well be remediated. We've already seen one of them that has a civic address, which is getting ready for development. So I feel that the remediation is something that adds value, because they're taking out the issues. So when they do go to sell this property, if it is remediated, it can be sold for more. So I guess it's just about timing.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro?
I think Mr. Levenstein hit it perfectly. It's all about the timing. So when he says that the remediation is still going on, it's still going on, there is risk in that in itself. Hence the reason that none of these parcels have actually sold. And when I talked about the aspect of the lending, the bank, and what they want to see in terms of that, I don't think that that can be avoided. The remediation has to be complete and over with before these properties will change hands. So in terms of timing, we're still some time away from there. And when we're talking about the reference date, I think you have to reflect the fact that there's still remediation going on this development. It's clearly visible in the pictures.
Thank you. Okay, that will conclude our properties today. Thank you very much for your presentations. You'll receive the orders in writing in due course. Thank you.